I want to bring in a bit of a debate, gents, because England versus Wales in the rugby this weekend. Wales won, which led to them winning the Six Nations. The referee has come out today and apologised for a couple of decisions he made in that game. Something that, in my opinion, we don't see enough of in football, and it's something that we need to see more of in football. Referees taking accountability when they have a poor game, because then I believe they'd get a lot more respect. Do you agree, Corey?
Yeah, completely. I think that it's the lack of transparency, isn't it, over the decisions? And you see with Lee Mason being injured for the game against Liverpool, Sheffield United, there's no accountability. It's a terrible, terrible look from them. And to be fair, he's made an error, but I think people can make errors. Like refs can do that. We understand it's part of their job, but A, the officiating standards are terrible anyway, generally speaking, and B, they don't ever own up and say, do you know what, I got that wrong. And I think that's where rugby differs, in the fact that A, there's the transparency, you can hear exactly what the thought process is, but B, because you can hear that, they can be held to account. We don't have that. You have to remember that behind all of this kind of the refs on the pitch, you've got the PMGO or whatever, so they basically say, we're not going to send anyone out, we're not going to make any decisions. Mike Dean did it to us a couple of weeks ago with Souček. It's infuriating. Yeah, I think that's all I can say. I'm sure we'll get on to Man United, Chelsea again, another terrible decision. And we have to, VAR, I understand, is a separate debate and an argument, but all it's doing is showing up how bad these refs are.
And that's the thing, there's loads of chat on this, and I feel like, the last couple of seasons, that every weekend I end up talking about VAR. But surely VAR was brought in to stop, as much debates over decisions. And that's why people at first were worried about VAR being brought in. But instead, it's caused more problems. And, you could look at it, and some people look at it and say, we should bin off VAR. How I see it is VAR just exploits the incompetence of the referees more so than anything else. And Karthik, it's a real problem, because we saw at the last World Cup, no English official there. And at the minute, they seem worse than ever.
Yeah, the A in VAR stands for assistant. So it's only as good as the referee that uses it and that's in charge of the game. And as we're seeing, the referees are terrible, so the usage is not being as good as it could be. Simple as that. The transparency thing can help. I watched back an old video. I think it was an Australian League game where the referee was mic'd up for his last ever game. And I watched it back. I've seen it before, and I watched it again, and I was like, how good would that be? That would solve so many debates. It would just be like, right, okay, we get it. It's the thing where these refs are seen as a separate entity, where we don't know what they're thinking, we don't know what they're saying. They never come out and explain anything, and it's just... it happens and we move on and we abuse them and whatever. That's it. If they were to communicate with us, or during a game we could hear what they said, I think we'd understand a lot more their thought processes, and maybe they'd feel a little bit better about making these mistakes. They wouldn't have to give stupid reasons like the one we saw in the Chelsea game, which we'll get into, I'm sure. But that's the thing. It's just a mess. It's just a mess.
Yeah, we'll get onto the whole mic'd up thing in a minute, because I do think that is an interesting topic of conversation. But let's just, for people listening, for people watching, let's just talk about, that decision with Lee Mason at the weekend. Firstly, we can talk about the bizarre things happening afterwards. But what was going on? Why did he blow his whistle? And why did he blow his whistle in the first place? If he could obviously see that they weren't ready, Corey.
I don't know. This is the problem, isn't it? Like, no one actually knows why. Has he panicked? In a stadium where there aren't any fans, you'd think that actually he'd be a little bit more calm and composed. But again, he's communicated, with Lewis Dunk. He's clearly said that, and I think this is going to be a common thing going forward. You see Luke Shaw yesterday, Lewis Dunk coming out and saying what was the actual conversation between the refs, because obviously that's not being aired. But I don't know. He's clearly made a mistake, panicked, then blown his whistle again. And then obviously, but it goes the other way, doesn't it? Because then West Brom say, well, hang on a minute, if you overturn that with VAR, then you've done us over. So he's made just a complete error out of it. It's inexplainable, but he should be able to come out and say, my fault, I'll take accountability, and then we go from there. And I think people would be a bit more accepting. It's a relegation battle, effectively. So, I mean, how much the fans will feel with Brighton or West Brom about it, but... yeah, unbelievable. But they do it very often. This is the problem. It's not a one-off. This is like every other week we see this in loads of games across the Premier League. And I don't hear across it from Europe at all. It's just always the Prem.
And it's like you say, if it was just the odd referee, we'd have an issue. But, every weekend when we have a decision like this, it seems to be a different man in the middle. You said it was Mike Dean with the Souček one. It was, you know, David Coote with the Pickford one in the Merseyside derby. And now this weekend, we're looking at Lee Mason. And every week, it's a new problem. A new official's been there and made the mistake. And I don't mind mistakes. I don't. You know, I've refereed for several years myself. I know how hard that job is. You know, mistakes are expected. But when you make mistakes, if they were able to come out and go, look, I hold my hands up, we've made an error, and you know, take that accountability for it, then they'd be respected a lot more. And you know, we're looking at another issue this weekend, and instead of him just coming out on Sunday morning and saying, look, I did make an error, I'm going to be fourth official today in that game, now all of a sudden he's injured, and it would be a very weird coincidence, Karthik, if it was an injury.
It's really not. I mean, you've got this on one side because he's clearly faked an injury to avoid backlash and avoid, you know, media coverage and things like that. And then you've got a complete other referee who's making decisions based on media coverage and backlash. So it's like referees just don't know what they're doing at the minute. It's not to say that, yes, I mean, at the minute the quality of refereeing is poor, but also they don't know how to react to things that are happening around them. And I feel like maybe has the introduction of VAR with the voice in their ear putting them off? Is that what it is? I don't know how to explain it because they just seem confused at the minute on the pitch.
And it comes on a week where they're being asked to clap when they come out the tunnel. You know, it's a very weird thing, and I think everyone agrees on that situation that, you know, at the moment, nobody wants to clap the referees because although everyone wants to be respectful to the referees and they do deserve respect, but at the minute the performances aren't good enough, and for that, I just found that news story absolutely bizarre the other day, gents.
Yeah,
no,
it's the fact that they're so out of touch, or the fact that they know that they're so in deep in terms of how bad the standard is. They're just trying to pretend that it actually doesn't exist. But if you're in your job and you perform that badly, that consistently, you're given training or you're sacked. And there seems to be none of it. It seems like, oh, we'll put you down a few leagues, but that doesn't actually resolve the issue. I think there is a wider issue. I think VAR does play a part in it. I think obviously the voice in the ear is something that they need to get used to. But really and truthfully, all it's doing is showcasing how bad the standard is.
And once again, it affected Brighton, who, you know, really don't seem to be having any luck at all at the moment. You know, we've seen their XG and their expected points and actually where they are in terms of them. And then once again, they have a weekend of you know, this time refereeing nightmares. But, you know, the interesting thing is with a free kick, that's not the first time Brighton have tried a quick free kick like that. They did it against us last season. Lewis Dunk scored against Liverpool last season doing something like that. So, you know, once again, it brings me to the point of consistency with these referees because they allowed last season, so why not now?